It's good to be back. It's been a while since I've been on the scene. I wanted to let everyone know that my website is back on, and I'm accepting bookings. So there are 2 emails, sovereignkeys@gmail.com, sovereignkees@gmail.com, and metakiqinetics, metakiqinetics@gmail.com.
Because you had mentioned to me that it was previous clients that were still carrying over from the last email,
Yep.
And that's why you had the secondary email. So just in case people might have been wondering why you had 2 email addresses. Well, there you go. Official welcome back. I think it's been, what, a couple of months now?
I think it's been maybe, 2.5, 3 months.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, maybe you want to do this by yourself because, you know, they had plenty of my frequency for the last 2 months. But, you know, you insisted on having me here. So here I am. It's good to be communing, especially following some major inroads in the Revelation stakes.
There was a lot of work being done. So I would like to maybe discuss, I would like for us to discuss in a little bit more detail for everyone about Sirius, because that is probably one of the larger aspects in comprehending how this whole system works through the reflection of creation, and how everything in this inverted version is the reflection. So I was hoping we could get into that a little bit deeper, so that people can know a little bit more of the depth of Alcyone and what Alcyone is to Sirius.
Yeah, and how it reflects this whole framework of duality. Are you saying that Alcyone is another aspect of Sirius? So for example, where you have a creation force, how it splits off.
Sirius's reflection created a dimensional mirror. And as soon as it became a dimensional mirror reality system, it became the inverted aspect of Sirius. And there is one representative, of course, that is going to be the reflection of Sirius herself, which is Alcyone. And Alcyone in the inverted realm, in the inverted antiverse version, is going to enact within the inversion the same impulses and the same characteristics and the same ignition points. Only it's going to be in the inverted verse, as Sirius is performing the same outside of the inverted verse. So,
yes. And that actually takes me to how I ended off the last part regarding the Karate Kid, and how at the conclusion he's being raised and you see his headband and there's the black sun depicted. Now, I just want to elaborate on a part of that. And I just wanted to add that the reason it's the black sun is because even though Jupiter and Saturn will both be ignited as suns, in symbology, they're still not the prime sun. They're still the reflection of Alcyone,
yes,
and of Sirius. Part of that was confusing because I know that Saturn is often referred to as the black sun. And that's why initially I thought that Daniel was Saturn, but he's not. It's Johnny handing over the mantle, and it's the Saturn cube that is going to be dismantled.
Yeah, and the relationship between Saturn and Jupiter with regards to Alcyone, or the progenitor Sirius, because everything is mimicking Sirius, what she's created. So the relationship that Alcyone is enacting with Saturn and Jupiter is a provision given to them. It isn't their rightful authorship, because they're not the authors. They've been given the mantle and the authority for a time while all of this plays out in the entire universe and the entire infiniverse, really, because what's happening outside of the inverse, like I say, is the first true original blueprint of this all. And this is simply enacting it through the lens of the reflection, which creates a much more inverted version. So it's really like an inverted version through the reflection. So,
and that's why a lot of these videos included as evidence. A lot of people, they'll start noticing the themes if they've actually clicked onto the links, and they'll keep noticing how they depict the television screen.
yes, exactly.
And that's a constant repetitive theme. And that is because we are within the television box right now.
Exactly. And that's being imprinted in the minds of everyone within the cube of this reality, within the synthetic simulation hologram. And it's no accident that the technology had it so that everybody gets a television, even, you know, all the countries in the world that can't afford, they have it, and everybody has it imprinted in them. So in essence, everybody is playing out the same thing, even in their micro levels throughout their lives.
This is why I find so interesting how people get triggered even by the term "as above, so below." They'll automatically think occult. Occult equals evil. But they don't realize that it's just, this is the nature of reality, and this is the nature within duality also. How everything works on the macro to micro level, and where we come from the stars as expressions of the stars on the micro level. And there is a reabsorption back into that, and a redistribution in its parts also.
That would imply that the inversion is being reabsorbed into the original. But this doesn't realize it's not the original. So this is being played out through the inversion to get back to the original, because the inversion to begin with wasn't correct. So what's happening outside of this verse, in the original verse, that not the inverted verse, but just the verse, is like the pure organic version. When it gets into the convergence of the event horizon there, it is creating literally a completely new universe that is going to, it's going to undo this duality system as we know it through the inversion.
The evidence uncovered, showing that there is an absorption that is going to take place, that the human, what we call souls, are the fruit of the gods. And this is why the gods have been sacrificed to. When they do come for the harvest, it is the stars that are actually coming for the harvest. And they will be absorbing that essence back to their body. And then there's going to be a redistribution of that essence, however that process goes. Now, obviously, I do not know how that process goes, but I do realize that there is going to be an absorption occurring. So, because everything feeds. This is how this system is predicated.
Let's back up though, because you needed to explain that. But what you're referring to is only in the inverted version.
Within duality.
It's only taking place within the inverted version universe. So the harvesting and the reabsorption is only in this version. But what's happening really on the outer verse is not a reabsorption, because it's going to finalize this duality. It's going to finalize a system, a universal system of that's based off of consumption, right? That's based off of consuming one another, because just as the cosmic relationships in the cosmic dance, they're all predicated on consumption, right? So
that's how it all works here.
Exactly.
I mean, even for plant eaters, it is basically one life force requires the consumption of another life force to sustain itself.
Right.
And doesn't even the plants, they need the soil. So they need to feed into the soil in order to grow. So this is on every level here relative to how things are going to play out, how everyone is affected by the duality system of law of opposition in all things.
Yeah,
And
until such time, because see, the dissolution of illusions, which is what we are going through in the event, in the convergence of the event horizon, is to undo this for all time, like in the entire universe. When I say universe, this is I'm speaking of the inverted universe, which is predicated on actually cannibalism. Okay, and even harvesting something etherically is cannibalism. It's all a form of consummation of yourself.
mm-hmm.
Right? So we are consuming our own stars and our own cosmic properties. And that's the Ouroboros in the inversion. So where we're headed is not that place anymore. It's not that inverted version simulation that is non-ending until finally there's nothing more to eat, because you've basically consumed all the essence, all your
Okay, but here's the pressing question. We know that not everybody levels up. Okay, so based on them and their own willful choices within this game of law of oppositions, where there is a choice, where there are scales being measured. So for those that do not graduate or level up, where is their role within this collapsing that's going to occur?
I'll explain it. This is the splitting of the two cells that is taking place and occurring, because what's happening, and it's not an ascension, okay? There's no such thing as ascension. This is a complete, it's another illusion. This is...
Dropped a bomb there. You better explain that one good.
Ascension is an illusion within, you know, we're inside a verse that has no ascending nature, if you want to call it that. We are going through the eye of the needle of our own existence, and in that we're going through the deeper levels of our own density. So we are actually densifying ourselves out of this place to get...
Okay, but people would say that that is ascension, just getting outside this box is
yeah,
ascension.
if you want to look at it that way, but oftentimes it actually means something different, because it means that your own personal evolution ascends beyond and outside of this. But the reality is it doesn't necessarily work that way with the majority of the people. When they realize things, it isn't necessarily that they ascend and become, you know, because you always think ascended masters and all of this stuff, right? This is, they're still trapped in here, okay? This is the thing. This isn't over until the convergence happens. None of this...
So you mean like the spirit, the souls that cross over here, that they're in a way, in a state of holding in another dimensional space, still within the framework, until it's time for this collapsing, because that's how I feel about it.
It's until it's the convergence of the event horizon, and you know, everything is everything according to this verse, that's in this verse and of this verse, will be in this verse until the convergence occurs and the supernova clusters that happen ignite this out of existence and split the cells, which means one cell is being created from our evolution. Okay, so we're essentially outgrowing the old verse. And when we outgrow the old verse, our frequency increases, it changes. It's no longer, it's like cognitive dissonance with the old verse. The two can't sort of be within the same space and time. Even though space and time is like, you know, it's an illusion, but it's how this verse has been created through the reflection. So when the frequencies change through our evolution, we, not even through it, our consciousness, we don't have to literally be conscious of this, but the frequency of those that are lower, let's say, for example, it's not compatible anymore, to the point where eventually they will not see each other. So the frequency of someone who is stuck in, let's say, in the old cell won't even register you. You will not be seen eventually. Vice versa, you're not going to see them. And so as these cells continue to grow and separate from each other. There's now, I mean, they're going to be completely split off in the convergence when it happens. So for now, they're still together, but you can see that they're two distinct cells. So the one that we're growing, and we have been growing and outgrowing the old verse, is the one that is creating the new verse that is more real, more organic, and more connected to Sirius and everything that is outside the cube of this hologram.
Well, we had a little chat offline yesterday regarding Sirius, and because people often associate Sirius with the duality as well, how there's Sirius A, and people have often said that Sirius B is a negative aspect of Sirius. So, I mean, can you cover some of what you had said yesterday regarding what people know as Sirius A?
Yeah, in the beginning, if you want to call it that, I don't know how else to say it. There's just Sirius, and Sirius is the first heaven. So when the reflection began, then you got Sirius B, and you began to get all of the galaxies, and you began to get all of the reflection of the dream. And this is how it happens. So now you've got many new creations being birthed from Sirius in Sirius B. And then from there, you know, you have the Pleiades, you have all of the systems. And
well, and this is why, and I often keep repeating this, is that creators create creators. So creation is given its will. So for example, you have scientists here that can create other life forms and tinker with it, and then arguably they would be the God and the Lord of that creation. I recognize the role of the Father and the Supreme Father and the Supreme Mother in all of this.
Yes.
Because there are those that were the progenitors, and they did love us enough to give us a will, and even a will to screw up.
Totally, absolutely. A will to create whatever we wanted to create out of our underverse, to create literally a universe that was attached to the duplicity when we split ourselves, and they let us do whatever.
Yeah. And even to create against our own gifts of creation. Look at how many of us live our lives. You know, really, when we look at it, often are we not our own worst enemies? I mean, we can say what we want to say about the opposition, but more often than not, when we look in the mirror, you know, I'll speak for myself. You know, often I find that even the parts of my life that are unfulfilled, then I will say, well, I really was the author of that through my own choices and what I've enacted or not enacted in my own creative process. So, so in the end, I mean, look, I do recognize, you know, that this life is tough. There is definitely some harsh opposition here, and it is going to get harsher. And that's a big part of our work, is to take people through the shadow realms of the darkness that is going to make itself more manifest. I mean, I would much rather speak about the positives, and I can totally understand why a lot of people do focus on that. But we are going with our own process and our own nudgings, and we know it's going to be a pretty bumpy ride, and not just based on what we've been shown, but just what we knew coming in. Okay, we knew that this was going to unfold and unravel, and in a sense collapse upon itself.
Yeah, it's going to be the fire of pure refinement.
This is where the bodies of Genesis are coming around full circle. They split off from each other after the collisions, where there was a splitting off and creation of new worlds and other star clusters. They went their own ways, and now they're coming around again. And this is why in the codes as well, you'll see they refer to Saturn as the circle, and he comes around.
This is also why you have the spiral of creation, because the spiral is also that circle.
Well, they show that circle in Lady Gaga's track.
And that circle and that spiral is also the spiral of creation itself. Now, what I wanted to say about Sirius, which is something we haven't spoken about much, is that Sirius has a father.
Yeah.
So she's the firstborn of the Holy
Well,
Father, and the Father is also the mother. It's an incredibly deep mystery. So, and of course,
and that's why there's an inverted father, which is Saturn.
yeah.
And so that's why there's an inverted, how I'd said in the last video that Saturn is often depicted as the masculine feminine.
Yeah.
I mean, that's within this level, within this inversion aspect. It is still a reflection.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are speaking about, the transgender agendas and the whole stripping away of the masculine expression and creating imbalances. I mean, that is taking place, and that's taking place chemically. That is taking place through MK Ultra programs. It has to be said. So there is a more natural essence of that expression, but there is a meddling, an inverted meddling that has become involved.
So the uninverted version of that is that before the duality, before we split, we were both things. We were the two combined as one. So when the duality happened, we were split from ourselves. Our masculine and our feminine got ripped apart. And then because we were through the lens of the inversion, through the lens of the reflection, which creates even a deeper level of inversion, because it's not just a reflection, it's the inversion through the reflection. So then you have the absolute corrupted perversion version, which is what has been lived out and is being lived out.
Yeah, though look, normally I do hesitate to go into that area because it's a very complex area. Because when you also have scenarios where, I mean, look at the body; it's a vessel, it's a container. Now, how life force can be planted within that container? There's a lot more to it. So, for example, you could put a feminine soul expression into a masculine container, and this is why, and it could be the underworld lords that are in charge of distributing part of that. And this is why I do not want to judge anybody harshly. So you have a life force. So a feminine life force can be placed into a masculine body. And this is why you'll often have people saying that I felt I was a woman trapped in a man's body and vice versa from birth. And this is the thing, I do not want to judge any of that. And I would say I would exert caution on those who have been programmed through religious systems to judge and condemn and damn people.
Absolutely.
For that, the things that they do not comprehend the workings of. And then you also have those who even on other levels and even carrying over life traumas where their first sexual experiences were with someone of the same sex, and then that did program them and rig them into same-sex attractions because that was what their beginning was, in their memory, and how so that's been put into their cellular memory, and so they're operating on that.
What you're discussing are all the interferences and manipulations and hijackings that are, what occurs in an inverted reality system, but
Through millennia.
Yeah, through eons. But what I want to say is that even without manipulation or tampering, the reality is both have both inside.
Yep.
So everyone has both. The parts of us that were split off from ourselves in this experiment aren't necessarily like the complete male part of myself was ripped out or any of that. It's you still are both. Okay. It's just that being comprised of the two things within you, you were split in a duality. So you're just not, you don't have the complete memory. You're not intact as per that other half that decided to create through its own consciousness what it did, but you are still the reflection of both male and masculine. Some have more masculine or retained more masculinity even though they're female, or vice versa, or some just retain more of one essence or whatever, but we are both things.
And often I find that if if one is repressed more than the other, and then that balance is thrown out, often the result is not positive for evolution. You know, so it's like you've got a lot of the guys who are raised to be macho, you know, and don't cry, or that's not manly, and this isn't manly. And then you often find that through that repression, it manifests in other negative outward ways if they don't allow that expression to come out. And this is often, and this is quite rife. And obviously there's the flip side to that, you know, applied to the feminine, when there's an overcompensation, you know, to the masculine. And then, you know, oftentimes people will find that will not lead them to contentment when that is completely thrown off.
When you have to deny any part of yourself, when you comprise all those parts, of course you're going to have a very negative reaction. And in fact, what you're going to do is you're going to be creating what that adversity is within you. So
realize that, like, how huge social engineering plays a part in this.
Absolutely.
Where all this is like, no, you don't do that. You're a female. You don't do that. You're a male.
Absolutely. Because that's what this social experiment is. This is what civilization is. This is an experiment. It is, when you study anthropology, you study what this programming is and brainwashing as per culture. And, you know, there's nothing more powerful than being born into anything and being a product of it, because you know, this is the thing, nurture versus nature and versus your environment. I'm reminded of an experiment. There was a journalist that did, and this was really well done because it's a good synopsis. Okay. You take anybody and you take them when they're first born and you put them in whatever environment you want. And by the time they're 3 years old, you will have a perfect product. So they took a little boy who was born in a KKK society, and basically the journalist followed the family for the first 5 years. The little boy, by the time he was 3, perfect product. That is what he knows. This is just one example of many, but this is what everybody goes through, being birthed through this inverted reality. You're literally inundated with complete programming. Mm-hmm. And the programming removes your first instinct and intuition, so that it takes a lot longer for people to acquire it, to regain it, or even just the insight, because it replaces your insight with the program.
An interesting area to follow up on will be why some people are more susceptible to programming than other people. You've spoken about the backdrop people, other people call NPCs, non-player characters, where I will say that, you know, when we look at how this game is run, it's an interactive system. Mm-hmm. So for example, if the ones who are reals here mm-hmm. have chosen negative alignment, mm-hmm. then on the higher levels, there will be more negative effective consequence brought down as a result of that. Yeah. And the NPCs will be the instruments used to apply that.
Absolutely.
So I'm factoring more about how those who are, you know, the reals,
yeah,
who have the real essence here,
mm-hmm.
How they can, you know, is that because, would you say that's because there are some spirit souls here that are younger than others? How we're not always at the same.
No, I mean, we may be at different evolutionary stages in some people can look at it as younger or older, but I don't really ascribe to that. I don't think anybody's really younger or older. It's just different. Maybe some beings have experienced most of their lifetimes in different dimensions and different galaxies and have different experiences. And this particular inverted reality, they've come in to help, so they don't really know much about it.
Okay. So we would then say that this, in a way, this assembly of people of all various degrees of consciousness, would you say it's because they've obviously made different choices in previous lifetimes, which put them more in the negative polarity? So then when they've been reinserted here, they've still carried that in their memory as weaknesses that they're here to hopefully evolve from and to step up.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. As soon as we began to experience our own creation, And that duality through the reflection, really from that very moment that we did that, we ended up creating our own verse versus anti-verse, just as above, so below. It's no different. It's no different than the verse, the infiniverse that's outside of this whole cube system. We have our own. And so we created the same thing within ourselves. And we, in our own duality of darkness and light, meant that, hey, guess what? You're gonna experience this just because you did that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you cannot have darkness without experiencing what that creates. So here we all are.
Well, I don't know where the idea of karma became a dirty word, because to me, karma is simply you reap what you sow.
Yes. Yeah.
I remember in certain New Age circles and commentary in New Age circles, it was like suddenly that became a dirty word. It's like, what? We don't reap what we sow, that there isn't a cause and effect.
Yeah, I think yes, it is you reap what you sow, but I think because of the Indian belief systems of what karma was. See, it's a little bit different what karma is and was considered with that ancient system, because it's a caste system. So it really has a different meaning in that light. But the truth of it is, it's what you said. You reap what you sow. You create, something dark. Guess what? You're gonna.
Well, that's universal law, so I don't limit that to any cultural teaching.
Yeah.
To me, that's universal law, and that should be fundamental. The system, for all its criticisms, I found that if I have performed wrong, and then I'll get my ass handed to me almost immediately. That's the universe telling me that no, you messed up. You shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. It's also your higher self telling you, because it's one and the same thing. Everybody can be the embodiment in parts of all of these archetypes, of all of the star systems that have attributes. They have physical characteristics, they have emotional characteristics, they have characteristics that comprise really what we live and what we are. So,
oh yes, we are influenced by the gods, no doubt.
Well, we are the gods. So,
well, as the expression of them, yes, that's what makes us the gods, is because we have stemmed from their expression of consciousness.
We are the embodiment of what that is through manifestation. We are living the experience of that creation through matter in this particular density through this vehicle, but it's what it is out there.
That is the stemming, is that there was a root of that. There was a root of consciousness. There was the root of creation, which we'll call the father and the mother.
Yeah.
And that has exploded outwardly through that explosion of consciousness. And this is just one aspect that we're living.
This is one aspect. When creation occurred at the very beginning, it was one essence at the beginning. Mm. And that one essence is what birthed everything else.
Well, that's what people would often call the father.
So
in that sense, if we're looking at it from a religious standpoint, they'll call that the father.
And the father birthed a daughter. So, and the daughter birthed the universe.
Yeah. So who do we blame for all this?
So this is why, it's very intriguing and interesting when you see someone with certain characteristics that is attributed to, like, look at the Greek gods, the Egyptian gods, the Sumerian gods, look at the the ancient African gods, all of it, the ancient Hopi, the Native Indians, the Brahmins, it's just all there. The Mahabharata, all of it. Mm-hmm. It's very, very specific. We're talking extreme specificity as per characteristics to each of these gods. And
well, this has been going on for a long time. So in amongst all the downloads, mm-hmm. and there's this is why I say the records have been kept, and the records have been kept of the cycles. And so a lot of our work, which is trying to raise awareness that we are within the generation of the end of the cycle.
Yeah.
And this is my, and I'm gonna, and I actually wanted to remind myself to say this, is that, and I'm going to say this to the channelers out there, is that be very mindful of the channel, because there are such things as familiar spirits, and there's been a lot of mediums passing on messages that are completely denigrating that there is going to be major upheavals and it is not going to look pretty. And there will be waves of suicides occurring. And this is why I want to speak more about suicide, because we are here to prepare people spiritually, mentally, emotionally, on every level, so that they do not literally go insane when a comet strikes. And because they've chosen the bubble that a lot of these channelers have chosen to feed them, or they've given some sanitized version. Oh yeah, it's going to be a little bumpy, but we're all going to get through it.
Or when they start seeing heavens shaking and they start seeing all the different planets that are the systems that are coming in, and you're going to view them. We're going to see them. We're going to see
There's going to be a lot of people. Completely. There's going to be a lot of people who have lived relatively good lives in the scale of things that are going to completely screw things up because they were unprepared for the destabilizations that are going to come, and they're going to make some really dumb decisions.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And
look, I'm not saying, I know I say this, I'm not good at mincing words. I'm a straight shooter. That can throw a lot of people off. I don't sugarcoat. I haven't wanted to limit in my speech just how the severity. Okay. And even when I've even touched on the idea of the rapture, and that's another thing that's been poo-pooed by a lot of people, because they can't realize that there are overseers of this game, this experiment, this school, whichever way you want to term it, that will be plucking people out as continents sink from moment to moment.
Absolutely.
So be careful what you mock. And they do not need crafts. Though, you know what's very interesting? Now that we've outlined to the world what the crucifixion really is, how it's a celestial series of crossings. Now, when you look at all those paintings where you see U.f.os at the crucifix site, now you'll know they're here for the pole shift. And there is going to be more than one kind of harvest. And whatever method you are transported to another realm or dimension,
or phased in,
or even going underground,
or translated, because it's going to be a translation is going to happen and a phasing.
Harvesting can happen in many ways and forms here.
No, but what I'm like what I'm saying, translation and translating isn't harvesting. It's going to be a removal of the people, because the harvesting is going to be taking place, but at the same time the harvesting is going to be taking place, the translation is going to happen.
Okay, I think we're saying the same thing, but your idea of harvesting is different to what my definition of harvesting is.
And the phasing of it. When I think of harvesting, I think you're going to harvest, like harvesting organs, harvesting a body, harvesting.
No. Harvesting is a gathering. It's like the Bible says. Okay. It's just the wheat and the tares. But there is truth in the Bible, and I don't want to denigrate the Bible, because it has its purpose within the duality, the black and white squares. You just got to know how to recognize what the white square is of truth and wisdom compared to the game aspect.
There's two meanings for harvesting. Okay, one is literally to harvest life essence, like a vampiric, like a succubi, harvest. And then there's harvesting, which is what you're referring to, like the positive gathering. I don't call it harvesting. To me, has a negative connotation of like literally absorbing and eating and consuming and removing in a bad way.
Okay.
So, but
my perspective is that it's harvesting is a gathering.
Yeah.
And there's different ways that some can be gathered to be consumed, whether it's through the fires of cosmic fires and whatnot. And though I'll always say, just so people don't freak out on that, is that it's all a transformation of energy. Really, at the crux of it, we are electromagnetic beings. So take away the illusion of the shell here, where we've all taken many different looking shells through the cycles and through our reincarnations.
Energy can't die.
But exactly. It just gets transformed. How it gets redistributed.
When we were talking about creation and creator beings and how everything, you were saying like that in your mind's eye you see everything being created in one moment in time. In essence it did, but only after the first creation was made. So once the first creation was made and thought, it created a child, who in turn, it was the child who created the daughter, who created through her reflection everything. And at that point, when everything was created and everything became its own creation, and it's, this is where you have all of the different varieties of cosmic beings.
It's absolutely infinite.
And the first, of course, her being comprised of all things at once. So she was both a male and female. She was both. It was the essence of it all. Though
daughter as, I mean, when you say daughter, you're talking about a cosmic body as a feminine, with a feminine consciousness. Is that what you're trying to say?
It was, she embodied both masculine and feminine. She was both. Okay. It was the essence of all things comprised in her. This is why she could make a reflection, because she's a she. It was birthing creation.
Why is that called daughter?
Because the first emanation came from and created a womb.
Okay.
The womb of creation.
Yeah.
So in essence, the duality split the feminine and the masculine. But the creation was the womb.
I mean, this is all great, to know these things, and especially because oftentimes the waters really get muddied. For example, when we use a term like God.
Yes.
Because it all depends. People define and interpret God. Their definition is all different from one person to another of what God means to them. But when, our perspective of what God is completely different to what theirs might be, because as we said, we look at God as a creator of worlds or other life forms. It is a God to that creation. Though others might think of it, well, it's just, no, my definition of God is just that, like I said, from the origin. But technically, there are many gods and many goddesses.
Sure.
And everything in between.
There are now.
Well, apparently a lot of them are here.
Most of them all have been, like I've said, most of them all have been incarnated in the flesh. And the cosmos are playing out in matter, in human matter, in human form. And that doesn't really get spoken about very much out there, by the way. So, yeah.
Who do you think are the ones being cloned the most?
And that's what I talk about, and that's what I teach people, because that's the primes. Those are the mechas. That's where all these words come from. That's where the mecha comes from. Like, that's where, because it is the gold fire of creation. Literally, it is the golden fire of creation. So, and this is what we're playing out. And when we gather up our members from all of our experiences, outside of time, because it's timelessness we're experiencing. It's simultaneously happening in our mind's eye through the Father of time here. It has to be in increments because we wouldn't be able to handle it. If we actually saw that we were experiencing our own creation simultaneously, because there's no such thing as time or space, it would blow our minds. So in some ways, time has benefited our evolution.
Oh, I know there's purpose to it, Paul. I mean, as much as people want to demonize what this framework is, it does have a higher purpose. It is intelligent in design.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are those monitoring as well from higher levels of existence that are, I call them the good family.
Yep.
And really it's what we choose to adhere to, and really that will determine the outcomes. You know, it's what spirit do we adhere to, and do we answer to our conscience? Do we answer to those positive nudges, or do we ignore them? You know, do we answer to the negative pulls, and are we being overcome by the world system that is positive, negative, you know, by design? You know, there are forces that are designed to pull you down, and there are, as the flip side to that is, there is help as well to help pull us up.
Yeah.
But we have to be conscious through this all. This is my problem with some of these religious constructs, is that it's just giving it over to the parents to do everything, and then you know, you sitting back all passive, and then just doing what you want and thinking, okay, well, yeah, I'm just going to have this faith system, and just that alone is going to get me through. And no, if you have actually studied the scriptures, all religious scriptures, that they will have that aspect of that your actions play a big role.
I don't believe in mistakes, and I don't believe that the dark things we have to go through are mistakes. So are there any mistakes? No, I don't think so. I mean, was there an original mistake in the experiment? Maybe, yes. That's why we're in the inversion. But ultimately, it's a full circle existence where we're coming full circle because we've had to experience all parts of our creation.